So sometimes, not always, but sometimes you're not going to have your actor available on set to be able to sit in while you're lighting. And at other times, you're not going to have your camera. It has happened to me where a camera has failed while we were setting it up, while we were building it. It had to be sent out so that we could get another one. And you can't just sit there and do nothing. You have to do your job. You have to get set up so that when the camera does arrive, you're ready to go. So let's say your actor and your camera are not there. What are you going to use to light your scene? If you're coming from a background where you're using your false color on your monitor or your waveform monitor or your histogram or whatever to light your scene, especially with DSLR shooters, and you step up to a bigger camera and something like that happens, you're going to be standing around going, okay, now what do I do? Well, I'm going to show you what to do. You're going to take your light meter, you're going to meter your scene the way that we did in the Scout, and you're going to do some calculations in your head, and you're going to figure out how to light your scene without the camera and without your actor. So you can use a stand-in, and you can use a viewfinder. I use the Artemis viewfinder. This is what it looks like. You can see all the information here. I'm set to a 50mm lens. If I step up, it goes to 85. If I step down, and these are all lenses that I have saved in here. And step it down to 35, and it shows me the view, 25. When I go to 18, you can see it creates this border here on the outside. It shows me that I will actually have a little bit more image to the side. Let me try and fix the exposure a little bit so it doesn't blow out. You can see that I've got a little bit of room to the side there, and it'll calculate that out. And you might say, well, how does that correlate to my camera? Well, if you look really closely, I might have to do a still shot of this, but it says generic 4.3 digital camera at 1.78 or 16:9, and I've chosen generic 35mm lenses. But let's say I've got a PL mount for my camera, and I want to put some Cooke Panchros on there. I can select the full selection of Cooke Panchros, and first it'll give me this just sort of overlay, and if I switch to the full screen, I can see that an 18mm Cooke Panchro is going to give me that field of view, 25mm, 32, 50, 75, it's 100mm, etc. So it's really great. You can choose any camera or sensor. You can 16mm, 8mm, 35, different size sensors, Super 35 digital sensor, DSLR. Your still camera film or still camera digital. Your still camera film will give you like a 5D type field of view. And then you can take a picture too. So let's say we go to full screen mode, and I decide that, let's say, so we can actually see what we're looking at. Let's say I want to see this 18mm. I can hit the camera icon, and it takes a picture, and then it imprints all the data from that picture. And so I can go now to my photos on my iPhone. And I can see that photo I took. You can see it tells me 18mm, get rid of that. Generic 4.3 digital camera, the aspect ratio. It also tells me the latitude, longitude, heading, and then the amount that I have the camera tilted up or down from level. So it's actually really, really helpful, especially when you're scouting. Here, let's go over here. You probably get better exposure over here. When you're scouting, it's extremely helpful, and you can see if I go through this. I've already done my scouting. I've got my 50mm. That's what I'm going to get with the 50. That's what I would get with an 85. So I was able to determine ahead of time, before I even started this lesson, what lenses I was going to need. And then, of course, I walked you through how that was done. But I don't need a camera. I don't need an actress. I don't need anything. As long as I've got a light meter and a viewfinder, I can set up my scene. You can see from that the shots that I did to determine the angles. And then here's a little bit of stuff from which I actually was walking around with it and determining which lenses I was going to use. And I think I determined that I needed a 100mm lens, a 50mm lens, a 35, and a 24. 24 for the dolly shot, a 35 and a 50 for coverage over here, a 50 and a 100 for coverage over here, and that was it. Now, it didn't balance out that way because some of the shots we got here, the 35 was to balance out the 100 from over here. I wanted to show you that you can mix lenses, but unfortunately, I'm using the new Apocalypse Now hack, and it exposed that my Quanta Ray Sigma zoom lens has what you'd call not a sweet spot, but I call it an unsweet spot. Right at 100 millimeters, it gives you really soft, squishy, muddy, murky images. And so I'm going to try and clean up the 100 millimeter stuff so we can use it and intercut it with the 35 and the 50. So now we've determined what lights we're going to need for our scene. We know that we're going to need a 2K about 10 feet away. We know that we're going to need the 650 over here for rim light. Maybe. Until we actually get a stand-in and we take a look at it, we won't know. We can look at it with a viewfinder and kind of see what kind of rim light we're going to get from this practical that we'll have. I've put a, if you look really closely, I've put a, I don't know if you can see it, I put a daylight balanced 250 watt photo flood in here, which maxed out. Should give me a little bit of a blue wash, according to our blue light, onto our subject here. If it's not enough for me, I'm going to take the 650 with a blue gel and I'm going to boost that, that same thing. We'll use the 2K for the fill, and we're going to look at two things. We're going to look at putting neutral density gels on the windows, and then we're going to look at what happens if you don't have neutral density gels. I have to put a light outside this window. I don't have any HMIs. I don't have a light powerful enough to get the exposure up to 13 from out here. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to build a reflector using a piece of foam core and some tin foil and bounce some light from the sunlight coming down in through this window to bring the exposure on our subject up from, looks like we're still at 11, and our scene out here is still 15 2/3. So that's 4 2/3 different. I got to get her up to around 13 2/3 to fit it into my system, that 5-stop system. So to do that, we're going to use a bounce, a reflector bounce, the 2K, the 650, the practical light, and then we'll determine where to put our fill light according to how we want to get the highlights in the eyes. I talked about the sparkle in the eyes that I like. So where you place your fill light to get your exposure, sometimes you don't have a choice. Sometimes you have to put it somewhere where you don't get a really good highlight in the eyes, and that, in which case you would want to use a light like we have on this camera here, set somewhere to just get a little bit of highlight so the eyes don't disappear in our exposure. So let's go ahead and get our light set up and take a look at our scene. Okay, so we're all set up. Janinio's been kind enough to be our stand-in for Tara, who hasn't yet to arrive on set. And what we've done is we've put a 250 watt bulb in this practical here, which will be in some of the shots, but not all. I've sourced it, which I talked about in another tutorial, with this 650 here. The 250 watts I was getting in the practical wasn't enough to give me this rim light that I've got set up right now. So approximating the angle and cheating it over a little bit so I get a little bit better distance, I've taken the 650 and put a gel in it and some diffusion and have basically created a light on my subject that light is not capable of. Outside the window, I've got a silver reflector bouncing some light in through the window. I've put 0.9 neutral density gel here on the window here because our 2K bit the dust the moment we turned it on, so no 2K, so I'm stuck with a 1K. So I had to improvise, in which case it's a good thing we had the neutral density on hand. So this right here, you'll see, if you look out this window, it's going to be blown out, and you can see the reflector out there, but here, we're knocking this window down by 3 stops. We've got a 0.9 neutral density gel on the window, taped on the side of the window out here, and that is knocking down our exposure so that we can actually see what's going on. And then over here we got the 1K with the 201 half CTB gel on it and some diffusion. This is really cheap diffusion. If you can't afford the really nice stuff, all this is 1 mil plastic from Home Depot on some PVC framing. And this only knocks down my exposure by 1/3 of a stop. So I'm able to put my 1K far enough away for it to work, and then I'm using a 216 over here on the 650. And so this is all if we walk over here and take a look, we can see. Let's go ahead and point the camera at Janinio. Our basic setup is done. We've got him pretty much lit, ready to go. I've got the fill light, I got a key light, I've got rim light, and then I've opened up the curtains a little bit here without the neutral density so I can get a little bit of splash of light here. And you might ask yourself, okay, I know you put neutral density on the windows, but why didn't you put neutral density on the lens? Well, the reason is putting the neutral density at this point in the chain knocks down my exposure outside the window Whereas if I put a neutral density filter on the lens, it knocks my entire exposure down. So now instead of these highlights that I'm getting on the sofa from the lights that are coming through and any rim light that's coming through, all that would get knocked down by 3 stops. So I don't want that. I want to put it on the window because I only want to knock down what I see outside the window. But as you'll notice, I didn't put any neutral density on this window here, which you saw in the other shot, so that I could get 11 stops. You can see I've got, I'm at 10 2/3 to 11, it's bouncing around. On my key, I'm at a 9 1/3 on my rim, and I'm at 9 1/3 on my fill. So that's basically set up. That fits within our range. It fits within the 5-stop range that we talked about. And once Tara gets here, we will tweak and then we'll shoot this scene. So in this particular case, I told Tara to show up at 1 o'clock, and I told everyone else to show up at 11. So I knew that we were going to be here lighting the scene without her here so that she could walk in, we could bring her in, get her into makeup, and then as soon as we were ready to go, drop her right into the shot and start shooting. And that's exactly what we did. And here's what that looks like.
When Joe and I first started seeing each other, we wanted the exact same thing. We wanted to live together, but we didn't want to get married, because anytime any one of our friends got married, it just ruined their relationship. They just stopped having sex. It's true. It's one of those secrets that no one ever tells you about. And Joe and I would talk about it, and we'd say, we were so lucky to have this wonderful relationship. We could have sex on the kitchen floor without worrying about the kids coming in. We could fly off to Rome in a moment's notice. And then one day I was babysitting my friend's little girl, and we were in the cab playing I Spy. I Spy Mailbox, I Spy Lamppost. And she saw this man and this woman and these 2 little kids, and the man had one of the kids on his shoulders. And she said, I spy a family. And I just started to cry. I just started crying. And I went home and I said, the thing is, Joe, we never do go to Rome on a moment's notice.
In the kitchen floor?
Not once. And we talked about it for a long time, and I said, this is what I want. And he said, well, I don't. And I said, well, I guess it's over. And he left. And the thing is, I feel fine. I am over him. I mean, I really am over him. That was it for him. That was all he could give me. And every time I think about it, I am more and more certain that I did the right thing.
So that's it for this tutorial. I want to thank my friends Collier Landry for coming down and shooting this. My friends Janenio Salucci for being my grip/gaffer on this. Tara Erica Moore, you can check her out at Tara Erica Moore on IMDb. We'll throw that up on the screen. Also Malia Molino, who is in one of the co-stars of Love or War, which is a feature I just shot with the GH2. She's also in an upcoming, what should be a really funny web series called My Stupid Heart. And that's it. So next time we get into the Ansel Adams zone system tutorial, and that's when almost pretty much everything we've learned up to this point all sort of culminates into being able to start thinking in this space and creating. I will try and accomplish what I had set out to do in this one and some later tutorial where we actually shoot the full 11-stop range, 7-stop and 5-stop, and be able to compare those more accurately than the footage we got in this one. Anyway, that's it. Until next time, happy grading and shoot something great.